All right, it's 6:01. I'll call the Commission special meeting to order here. I'll open the meeting up with a pretense as to why we're here. I received a request from one of our commissioners to hold this meeting, and based on that call as well as other feedback that I've received from independent conversations with other stakeholders and at times other commissioners over the course of the last month, I felt it would be appropriate to schedule this meeting to give the entire Commission the opportunity to either express concerns of the GM's performance and or consider options relating to continued employment for the Port's GM. On the latter specifically, the Commission could consider the option to exercise an early termination of the contract with the current GM. If the Commission feels that this early termination of the contract is appropriate, I would need a motion and a second. If a motion is made and seconded, we will have the option to discuss the motion either in open session or an executive session pursuant with ORS 192.6602B. Either option will provide an opportunity for comments and discussion. If a decision becomes necessary on this, I will allow the GM the opportunity to decide whether we hold this in executive session or an open session. So, to that end, since we have a single agenda item, I'm going to refer to our list here. Stephen Webster has wanted to speak. Please.
Right here. I'm attending this evening because I'm concerned that you would even consider discharging your general manager, Mr. Parsons. I've had the occasion to meet with him twice in his, has to this time, brief tenure, and I find him organizationally competent. I'm impressed with the coherent budget he's brought to you with his staff and the budget committee, and that there's something going on that the community is unaware of. If there's friction in this commission and you're taking it out on this person you've selected to take us forward, I find that inappropriate and untimely. You haven't let him proceed far enough to get to an issue such as you consider. I think from the look back and over the terminal reconstruction, I think it's easy to lose sight that that was a remediation for the port. It's conflated into being something that the port has to perform now on that investment based on it. And we've lost sight of the fact that that remediation started out at a $16 million price tag, and through mismanagement or poor management by previous administrations, that one ran to something like 27 million, 28 million, and it's stalled out. It's a beautiful piece of work. It has enormous potential. I think we need to let Mr. Parsons carry on in his capacity and not have a knee-jerk reaction. Whatever's going on, it seems opaque. I don't attend these meetings, and I don't follow. I don't have an ear to the ground in terms of what's going on with this commission. But it seems that there are elements that sound dysfunctional, and we've seen what can happen with that kind of dysfunction already. 10, 15 years ago, the Port Commission in Coos Bay was discharged, and the governor appointed a commission to come into the village there to oversight it. And we don't want to get there. we want to maintain local control. That's enough for me.
Okay. I don't have anyone else on the list here. I think given the nature of this meeting and the fact that we didn't have our cards ready, we'll open this up at this point as a slight departure from our regular traditional way of doing this to ensure that anybody who wants to make a comment at this point, again, you'll have time at the end of the meeting, is welcome to raise their hand. Anything at this point?
I agree with Stephen in a variety of respects. My concern is that...
could you state your name?
My name is Mark Colson. I'm a member of your budget committee. First of all, the date and timing of the meeting seems a little awkward to me. You've got a vacancy on the board. Why you didn't fill that and then take this up when you've got a full commission might be appropriate. Two, I heard through a variety of sources, some actually from commission members and some from non-commission members, that generally speaking it was a foregone conclusion that we terminate for no cause. That seems like the coward's way out. I would like to hear specific charges if you choose to terminate. I think if you've got enough reason to terminate someone who's worked for you for less than 3 months after we've been without a port manager for a period of over a year, and the extensive search exercise you went through and the time you spent doing that and the money, that seems like kind of an abrupt ending to terminate that employee. I might suggest an alternative to that would be to move up the review of that individual that you're concerned about, if you have those kinds of concerns that would cause you to even have this meeting. Do that review, point out the things that you are concerned about, give them an opportunity to correct those deficiencies if there are some, and then do a secondary review, and this meeting might be appropriate at that time. But if this is nothing more than what I might consider an eyewash meeting to terminate the manager, I'm disappointed in the commission.
Okay. One more. State your name.
My name is Heather Mann. I'm the director of the Midwater Trawlers Cooperative here in Newport. And I disagree with Steve and Mark, respectfully. I represent 28 vessels, the majority of which are home ported here in Newport. We're the primary customers up at the international terminal. I co-chaired the committee to get the bond measure passed to rebuild the terminal together with Gail Fogarty. We worked on that hand in hand, fishermen and longshoremen together. I do agree with Steve that the main purpose of that was remediation, environmental remediation, and that took up the majority of the money that came through the bond measure. I think it's no secret there has been some dysfunction on the commission. I think that you guys have been divided, but I've seen an effort to pull together and do what's best for the port. I don't always agree with everything that you all want to get done, but I think it's important that the port move forward. I've had a negative interaction with the general manager. Invited him to come meet with the boat owners his first week here. He declined to do that. He said, I will meet with you, but I don't want to meet with them until I have a better understanding and have my feet underneath me and can have an intelligent conversation. I thought that seemed okay at first, but then within 2 weeks, he made decisions to move forward with terminating the Commercial Fishing Users Committee, with raising rates, all without having had conversations with the people that I work for, and we are major stakeholders in the port. I find this is kind of an awkward, I guess, way to have this conversation, but I don't feel that Doug has been honest with me, and I think he'll say one thing in one room and something in another room, and I don't appreciate that. I try to be as forthright as possible, always tell the truth. Nobody is confused about where the Midwater Trawlers Cooperative stands or the fishing industry. We're major stakeholders in this port. that terminal, as Don just pointed out, is full right now. And this is kind of our off-season. It's full. There's no room for more boats up there. We're not against shipping. We want to see something happen up there that complements what's already going on. We've already said we pay more. So I don't think this is about that. But I think that Doug and his personality, the way he's gone about running the port, is alienating your customers. And I don't think it's just the commercial fishing industry. So I think it's worth a hard look. I disagree with Mark, and I interact with the port on a weekly, if not daily basis. And so I think it's, I don't have anything to say about the timing, except that the Beaver game was on, so that's kind of unfortunate. It was delayed for rain. But
Canceled for the morning.
but other than that, I mean, I think it's something that needs to be discussed. It's important. We need to move forward. And threatening people by saying the state's going to come in and take over, I find that to be inappropriate. I've had legislative leaders say to me that they would fight tooth and nail to keep that from happening. We don't have a financial crisis here. We have a vibrant, diversified port that needs to keep growing. And I don't think Doug is the leader to take us there. And that's my opinion. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Anyone else? Oh, yes.
Yeah, Mike Story. I'm a mid-water trawler for Wayne. In the meetings that I've attended with Doug, and not to put him down, his expertise is not dealing with fishermen. I'll put it that way. And some of the areas that we've thought about, stuff like that, we've asked questions during these meetings, and there doesn't seem to be any narrative. I mean, he's an expert of dodging the question, if you will. And I think, what Heather says is that you need to get out and meet the people. Like our vessel spent over $30,000 tying up at the terminal using, Don and put it on Jim and stuff like that last year. It isn't, when you think of the vessels tying up, you think about somebody that's got a mortgage slip that pays $6,000, $7,000 a year, something like that. We spent $50,000 last year up there. So, I think you need to get out and meet the people and understand who you're dealing with. So that's all I got.
Yeah.
I have something to say. My name is Steve Beck. I was on the commission for a year, and I lived here for 15. And I agree with Mark and Steve and Heather. I think that there's been a disconnect a little bit, but I think it's because of newness. I think there's been a horrendous amount of disorganization and lack of communication on the commission's part to the public and to the general manager, from what I've seen from my viewpoint. I think he needs more time. I don't think he's probably up to the level that everybody would like him to be, because he's too new to be up to that level. But I think financially he knows what he's doing. I think a lot of what was done with the Commercial Fishermen Committee was actually driven by legal more than it was by the general manager. But I don't know that for sure. I need them to straighten that out, but I wouldn't blame Doug for that particular issue. I think that issue was an issue because of concerns about putting themselves in harm's way of other organizations. I hope you do keep Doug, and I hope he performs better, but I think he'd still maintain a good position as general manager personally.
Okay. Any other thoughts before we move on? Appreciate that opportunity for everyone and your feedback. At this time, I'd like to hear any comments or concerns from the commission or any thoughts on moving forward. Yes.
I just want to ask about procedure here at this point. Are we going to go into executive session to have discussion on the commission or not? How are we proceeding here?
Well, that's an excellent point. Given that this meeting is entirely focused on the GM's performance, as I stated earlier, I will give the GM the opportunity to decide if you want to continue this discussion in open session, or if you would prefer to do this in executive session. If we are in executive session, no decisions will be made until we come out of executive session. Doug, do you have a preference?
I'm going to request that we have this as an open hearing. I have nothing to hide.
Open session.
Open session. I haven't done anything that I know of that's wrong. I've done my best to try to meet the needs of the commissioners and do what they have told me to do.
Okay, well,
And so I would like to have it out in the open where everybody hears it. I'm an open book.
so be it. So to answer your question, right now we're going to continue with this discussion at the request of the GM in an open session to discuss the performance of the GM. Jeff?
I don't want this to be long, drawn-out detail. I'm just going to cut to the chase. We have a lot on our plate at the port, and we've had a lot of things happen over the past few years. The port's been kind of bruised from the whole shipping effort to where we thought we were going to have grants and Tiger grants and Oregon grant and have an opportunity that many people thought was going to be fruitful. And there was many years spent on that after we got out of the terminal remediation and rebuild and the NOAA build, and we kind of got to a place where we needed to move forward and do many things, increase our economic activity and profitability so we can continue to serve the community. And we had to look at the infrastructure we had and deal with that. We kind of came out of all those big projects needing to really move forward. And so we've got a lot on the plate, and it's, as elected officials, we are tasked with our most important task, choosing the person who is best suited to meet that challenge and to move this port where every single person in this room, in this community, want to be. And I don't look at this as a personal thing, but I look at it as I don't see the temperament that is needed to deal with stakeholders, employees, people that work for you, and people that you work for. I don't see the temperament and the communication necessary to coalesce an effort and people around the mission of where this port really needs to go. And it's my opinion that the sooner the Commission finds what we need to move this port forward, then we need to do it. And so it's my opinion that we need to move on at this point.
Thank you for that. Sarah, Walter, at this point?
Well, I'd like to say as a relatively new commissioner that it's been an eye-opener to be in charge of a lot of public money and a lot of public projects and a lot of people that I know that are affected by it all and people that I don't know that are new to town that are affected by all of it. And I'm one of the last persons to give up on anybody because nobody ever gave up on me, so I always appreciated that. And Doug is a likable fellow, very smart, quick, all of that. Many things that you've said I agree with. But when it comes to working with 5 bosses, it was a fail. It was just a fail. It just was something that never happened. And believe me, I tried. I can be rather charming on a good day and really gave it my best foot forward. And I was constantly surprised at how disappointed I was in the end. And it is, the commission has had very much of a struggling time, just as Jeff was alluding to. And we were so looking forward to our new manager to take the heat off of us and work with a group and get things going. And it was a shout out of the cannon, way past us, and never really looked back to who the 5 bosses were. I really felt that strongly, and I didn't appreciate some of the manipulation with people within the commission also that occurred under Doug's reign. And we don't need that. We need positive, forward-looking people to bring this port back up to what it can be, to bring it to what it can be, and to work together. And there's so many people in place in the port that so desperately want that to happen. And us 4 commissioners and our soon-to-be 5th commissioner are the 5 people most interested in bringing this port forward in a successful manner. And we need partners we can trust. And so I believe that it's time to make a change also.
Okay, thank you for that. Walter, do you have anything?
At
this point?
I'd like to support my fellow commission's comments. I think that as the commission should do what's best for the port, and I think that we've heard it from other commissioners, and I've heard it from other stakeholders and employees that I think that we need to come together and make a decision.
Mm-hmm. I guess I can chime in here as well. I'd like to also reiterate what a number of the commissioners have already said. I think that Doug brings a great deal to the table. I think there's 2 components that are probably most concerning to me, and that has to do with experience with public boards as well as just a general fit within an institution or an organization. Those are people that sail a lot. When a crew isn't gelling together, it makes the job 10 times more difficult. When people aren't pulling in the right direction. And that's probably been the biggest concern for me. I think, again, there's a lot of positives that Doug does bring to the table. But right now there are some serious concerns that certainly have been expressed to me more confidentially that have brought me to this position and caused me to reflect on whether or not we have the right fit in this position. And those are essentially my comments on the situation. Does anyone else have anything else they'd like to add at this point?
Nothing.
We'll have additional opportunities to discuss things, but at this point, I'd like to give the GM an opportunity to speak to some of the things that he's heard from the commissioners.
Oh, I don't think I want to stoop down to he said, she said kind of things. You have your position. I guess a couple of things I would like to point out is that there has been, since Patricia left, there has been an extremely hostile environment for me to work with the board. It has been a polarized board that has 4 different directions in most cases. And when I came in, I thought I was to take direction from all of you, and I understand now that no, I should just be. It worked out well with Patricia. I took direction from one person. I brought her problems. I put them on the table. I said, here's this side, this is what the staff feels. You get direction. Tell us what to do on this item. And then the next day, or 2 days later, we might have 3 more items. And I bring them to her and say, we need direction on this. Which way do we go? And I think that it's very important that the public understand that you've got some disingenuous people on your board. You've got 2 commissioners right here that gave me direction to deal specifically on the commercial fishing users group the first week I was here to try to see if we could get it to not be a standing committee so it didn't take up so much of, for all the reasons that have been talked about. Heather, as a lobbyist, has done a good job of pointing out, Doug tried to kill the CFEG. I never did. I never said that. I put it in writing to her. That wasn't the case. I said, all we want to do is make it not be a standing committee for 4 or 5 reasons. And she just repeatedly came back to that, oh, Doug's trying to kill the CFUG. It's not true about this, and so I'm not going to go too much detail into that. But a lot of the actions I took were actions I took based on what the board members sitting here in front of you told me to do. And I am very frustrated by going out and doing something I've been told to do by my bosses, and then getting it done, and the minute my bosses get any political pressure on them, they point fingers at me and say, that was a bad decision. We didn't tell you to do this. You know, come on, get some backbone. I just have a problem with that. So that's all there is.
Okay. At this point, any other comments from the commission? As I said, there's a series of options that we have as a commission. We can, again, more formally reprimand. We can leave this thing as it is, or we can make a move to end a contract or terminate a contract earlier. Anyone have anything, thoughts on the board?
I again don't want to get into a he said, she said.
All right.
I guess I would like to say one more statement that I think about there, based on what you asked. I am ready, willing, and able to continue as GM under conditions of having reporting to one individual that speaks with a cohesive voice for the board. And I think we can get a lot done that way. I have a lot of hope with the new selected commissioner that we've sworn in tomorrow night. I'd like to be part of the team that helps solve some of the problems here at the port. And I think I've proven myself in the time I've been here. I've heard clearly some of the concerns, and if I am kept on, I would certainly do my best to address those concerns rather than ignore them.
Okay. I think, again, at this stage of the meeting, I'll hear any more concerns, or I'll entertain any motions that anyone wants to make.
Well, I'll make a motion. I move that the 30-day termination provision of the GM's employment contract be exercised, and that the GM be given written notice that his employment with the Port of Newport is terminated as of July 26, 2018.
Motion's been made.
Second.
There's been a second. I'll give another option for any other comments on the motion at this point. Anyone from the commission? Yes.
I just want to speak to it. This isn't easy, and I just think it's necessary that we move forward as soon as possible, because we have been maybe some frustration with the movement of the port for a little while now. We've been bogged down, as I said before, and I think it's just as difficult as it is. We are tasked with moving this port forward where it needs to go, and this is an unpleasant but necessary step, and that's how I feel.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? I agree with Commissioner Lackey that none of this stuff is an easy thing for anybody to do. I also feel very strongly that it's important we're all pulling in the same direction, as I said before. And you know, it gives me pause when we continue to look at a board, whether it's considered functional or dysfunctional in any way, and somewhat give up on it. And that's been a little bit of my impression. That's what's happened here. The board's not going anywhere, at least not at this point. Certainly could happen at any time, of course, but I think that there's been a lot of challenges that we faced in a very short amount of time that have been here and that Doug's been here. And I think some of those challenges are almost of our own doing. And while on some level we could look at this as a on-the-job training a bit, or hey, maybe we can work this out as it goes along. But another tact is, do we have that time? And I think everybody in this room knows we're on the ropes a bit, and we've got to start moving forward. And that means the port staff, the general manager, the board, the stakeholders all have to be pulling in the same direction if we're going to pull ourselves out of this. And if those don't feel like they're all pulling in the same direction, then we're going to go no place. And the port can't afford to go no place. I think this is a very tough decision for all of us. But nonetheless, that's my feeling on it as well. Any more comments? All right. We have a motion on the table. We have a second. At this point, I will hold the vote. All those in favor of the motion on the table signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? None? The motion carries. At this time, Doug, the port intends to honor the contract as it was written for the next 30 days. However, your presence on site will not be required unless it's part of a tradition or a transition of an interim GM. I would like you to work with, and by tomorrow morning, 8:30, if you could pass off your keys and any passwords that you might have to the Director of Operations. And I'd like you to, again, remain available should the situation need it for the next 30 days while we go through the process of evaluating our next steps here. If you're not, I think it's important to maintain that if we want to continue the 30 days that we have available to us. I'll take this opportunity again to reiterate that I think it's not lost on this board or probably even in this room the amount of work that you've put into the port in the short time we've been here. But I want it to be clear too that I believe that this is not a for-cause decision. I think this has to do with fit. And to that end, again, I just want to reiterate that we are committed to honoring the remainder portion of your contract. I think I'll be in touch with Karen, most likely to schedule another work session to later this week to evaluate the process going forward for an interim general manager, as well as to organize a search for the next general manager. I think I speak for the board on this one, where we all understand that none of this can wait. Things have to keep moving as quickly as we possibly can. It's important for us as a board and as a port to not have these open positions. So I think every one of the commissioners is appreciative of that, and we intend to move forward with it. I will be looking to, like I said, schedule that meeting, which I hope to do for Thursday of this week. At this time, I'll open things up. Before I open for public comment, again, I want to give Doug another opportunity if there's anything else you'd like to say.
I think the only thing I'd like to say there is it's not going to be necessary to have a transition period because I could see this clearly coming over the last 2 weeks, and I've already made the transition with all of our people. Aaron already has everything he needs to if he's going to run it tomorrow, and it was clear cut where this thing was coming from, and so I took the opportunity and tried to do what I could to make a smooth transition, so you will have a smooth transition.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
I've already cleared out my office. I've already handed everything over to the staff.
Thank you. At this point, again, we'll have our second public comment period. If anybody would like to comment again on anything, state your name. We'll have another opportunity. now. Oh, yes.
I'm Dan Camicella. The decision of the board has been made. I do not agree with it. However, what I would really like to see is that we don't go another year without a general manager and the floundering that the last board did for the year that we didn't have one. And I would love to see that when you guys do have that hiring process, that it doesn't have to go to the newspaper again when you have 6 candidates show up, all highly qualified, and then you just dismiss them all with a stroke of your hand. That does not look good for the port. It does not bode well for anybody who's going to think about applying for this job. And the fact that, you hired Doug, brought him in, and now you're releasing him within a few months, that does not look good also. So I hope the board takes a very professional tack on this to make it look better than it did the first time. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Heather Mann with Midwater Trawlers Cooperative. I'm friends with Dan, but I totally disagree with him. I think this is the real world, and it is what it is. This is a dynamic job in a port that's one of the most diversified on the West Coast, is the envy of a lot of other ports. Yeah, there are some issues here. It's no secret there's been some dysfunction. I'm optimistic, especially with your new commissioner, with Jim coming on board. I think I've already seen in the last year times where you all have made compromises in order to get to a 4-0 or a 5-0 vote. I've seen that. I've seen people give up some of their own personal agenda to get there. I'm optimistic. I think it's totally inappropriate to suggest that Aaron did not do a good job. I thought Aaron did a great job when he was interim. I don't think there was floundering. I think he took the job very seriously. He did the best that he could, and I think he did a great job. So I don't think it's suddenly this huge absence of leadership at all. I feel confident. I think that we have a lot of opportunities here. I think there's an effort under Stuart's leadership to bring people together to move forward for what's best for the port, and I support that. I disagree with what Dan had to say, and I think that there's a lot of promise here, and we will be supportive and continue to support you in whichever way we can.
Understood. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Without any other comments or any hands showing, I will go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 6:39. Thank you all.